I teach college freshmen and sophomores, and I have found that teaching about parallel computing is conceptually easy for most students. However, when I try to explain it in a more practical way using real life scenarios, it's really difficult for them to grasp. My course is supposed to lay down the foundation for everything else that my students will learn for their degree. So it's important that we make the right connections early on. The obstacle to student understanding, I believe, is about threefold. First, they have limited knowledge about real world conditions. They're excited about learning about parallel computing, but they don't really understand how they work. Also, as freshmen, they really fear being wrong. They're pretty good students. They've always had the right answers, and they're really afraid to take risks. They also really have a misunderstanding of the complexity of real world systems. One scenario that we use looks at race conditions. And for those of you that are familiar with that, race conditions occur when you have two independent conditions that are happening at the same time. One of them inadvertently wins. And because of that, the other second condition is prevented from being correct. And when we actually present that to students, they don't necessarily know what to do. And a lot of them will just freeze, wait for somebody to tell you the right answer. That you or somebody is typically me, but that's not helpful for them because if they're going to start looking at chaotic real life systems by the time they're juniors, they really have to explore being wrong and then learning from each other. So to do that, we use several different simulations where students play with the roles of computers in a cluster. Then we give them different ends. They have to explain the process, what went wrong, and how they might prevent the errors from occurring. Since they're just beginning in their field, they don't necessarily have all the information they need to have the correct answers. I just want them to start brainstorming because sometimes you have to ask a lot of questions to get good questions. You have to brainstorm a lot and be wrong and be comfortable with that before you can get the right answer. Since they're young, we can then discuss as a class. And I mean, they don't have to be young to discuss as a class, but we do. But then I show them what computer scientists and network engineers have done to solve some of these problems. We do them in generalities because we can't get into a lot of the detail. They're going to do that in later classes. But it's a really great brainstorming exercise because they start seeing that in a chaotic real life system, you don't always know what's going to happen, and you're going to have to still figure it out. And you need to rely on your peers to figure out what's going on too, so that the problem gets fixed. I don't expect them to come up with the right answer, but I do expect them to try. Sometimes they really surprise me with some of the ideas that they come up with. I want them to be creative. I want them to think outside of the box, and I want them to take risks. Because if they can start doing that, then they can start brainstorming and figuring out some of the things they're going to see in their later classes because they're just comfortable with it.